So I'm from Portland, Oregon. It's where I grew up, and Portland's reputation, the word weird, by the way, is being used a lot by Democrats as a
Hmm.
talking point against JD Vance and Trump and Republican voters generally right now. But I mean, a week ago, that was a word that's actually embraced by a lot of so-called progressives. So Portland's
Right.
unofficial slogan was "Keep Portland Weird."
Keep
I,
Portland weird. Yeah.
I know that Austin, Texas had a variation of that as well, "Keep Austin Weird."
Hmm.
And so Portland was all for decades has been characterized by its progressive politics in culture. And that had a lot of lovely things. You had interesting people who gravitated towards their artists, small business owners, people who were very creative. And that was sort of the environment I grew up in. And I would say in 2016, that context took a really disturbing and dark and deadly turn when Portland, like many other left-wing cities, many of them on the on the West Coast, were responding to the rise of Donald Trump as became the nominee for the Republican Party in 2016, and then eventually won. People rioted in the November 2016 election for days in Portland, and
Hmm.
that at that time, I was working as a student journalist for the Portland State newspaper, and I was assigned to go out and get some video footage on my mobile phone. It's an old iPhone. And I went out and I was really shocked at what I was recording, in that I saw people dressed head to toe in black with their faces covered. At that time, it was unusual to mask up.
Hmm.
And they had crowbars and bats, and they were just smashing up downtown and starting fires. I didn't know anything about who and what those people were rioting for. I remember reading on the headlines the next day in the legacy media that these were protesters who were frustrated and fearful of what a Trump administration could bring. And so immediately I saw, there's kind of a shift away from the violent extremism that was on display. And I just kept going out and continued to record many of these protests for the next 4 years as they became entrenched and became very, very violent.
Hmm.
And very quickly, I learned who those people in black were, because they would show up with their banners and their logos and symbols, and they described themselves as Rose City Antifa or Antifa, self-described
Hmm.
so-called anti-fascist.
It's not just an idea.
It's not just an idea. It is an idea in part, but it's an
Yeah.
idea that can manifest in organized criminality, and that's
Right.
exactly what happened.
Hmm.
And so in leading up to 2020, there was all this buildup of networks that were being built, regarding links to activist attorneys, fundraising sources, groups, ad hoc groups that had social media accounts. And so after George Floyd died, um, the groundwork had already been laid for activists to immediately mobilize and carry out
Right.
months and months of
Hmm.
violence. So I went undercover in 2020 to document a lot of that. But before that, I had been, in the course of my reporting on Antifa, violently beaten.
Hmm.
A lot of people first heard of me in 2019 because of these photos and videos where I'm bloody and I'm
Yeah.
drenched in the so-called milkshakes. And I nearly died from that mob beating. Um, but that's sort of like generally the kind of the arc of my work in Portland. Eventually, I had to leave Portland permanently after a second attempt on my life in
Mhm.
2021.